His fingers pressed against my chest through the thin fabric, and the warmth of his palm made the skin at the base of my ears burn hot. After marrying her archenemy, they fell in love after the wedding. I couldn't handle the pressure and ended up agreeing to a business marriage with Lu Yan, my childhood rival and sworn enemy. I'd always thought it would just be a formal arrangement, each of us going our separate ways. But unexpectedly, late one night, after he climbed into bed and I kicked him right off, he flew into a rage and demanded, "Zhang Xingqi, can't you show me a little more consideration?" I was completely dumbfounded at that moment. Was a marriage arranged for business purposes supposed to be nothing more than a mere formality? Lu Yan and I have been sworn enemies since childhood. Our fates were simply incompatible. From kindergarten all the way through high school, we were always in the same class. He was the model student in the teacher's eyes, excelling academically and remarkably self-disciplined and ambitious. As for me, I was always the mischievous troublemaker, the problem child who constantly got into trouble and drew extra attention from the teachers. After the college entrance exam, I applied to University A, while he was directly admitted to University H. It thought at last I could finally shake off this nemesis, but lo and behold, after graduation, I stayed on at University A for graduate studies. And to my utter astonishment, he ended up applying to and getting accepted into the graduate program at University A as well, though in a completely different major. From then on, every time we happened to run into each other, we'd secretly exchange a few snide remarks. Once, he teased me, "I heard, Professor, he says your paper is pretty good, just like Mushroom Hot Pot. You even have the energy to chat with your classmates." It was obvious he was making fun of how unfinished my paper still was. I shot back immediately, glaring darkly. "How could I possibly compare myself to someone like you, who only turns up once every 1,000 years? On average, you're at 2.5 per 1,000. After finally making it through graduation and returning home, my parents dropped a bombshell on me. They wanted me to enter into a business alliance marriage with Lu Yan. This news was no different from being forced to marry off to the Zhang Niu. Right there and then, I grabbed onto my mom's leg and burst into tears, sobbing, "Mom, you're your only biological daughter." But my mom mercilessly pushed me away, saying, "Lu Yan himself doesn't have any objections. What's there to complain about?" In Mom's eyes, Lu Yan is strikingly handsome and exceptionally capable, already taking over the family business in college and proving himself to be a reliable heir. As for me, I'm just a spoiled rich kid who only knows how to spend money. If you leave the family fortune to me, it'll surely be squandered sooner or later. I couldn't help but retort, "Then aren't you worried he might just run off with all the Lu family's wealth?" Mom had already thought of a countermeasure. "Don't worry, he has got good character. If you're really concerned, why don't you hurry up and have a child so you can start raising them from an early age?" Finally, the elderly father beside me spoke up, pulling out his ace in the hole. "Get married. Can't your allowance triples?" Instantly, I lost all my temper. 10 million a month for pocket money. Just for getting a marriage certificate. If things don't work out, I can always get divorced anyway. I was certain that Lu Yan must be thinking exactly the same thing, as we've hated each other ever since we worked as it'd be downright weird if he actually had any feelings for me at all. That evening, just as I'd finished taking a shower and dried my hair, I received a WeChat message from Lu Yan. "Come out, him at your back door." At 10 o'clock in the dead of night, his red supercar stood out vividly on the pitch-black roadside. I pulled on a jacket and headed downstairs, saying irritably, "What are you doing here at this hour? Just get to the point already." Heaving against the side of the car, Lu Yan said in a flat tone, "Uncle said you've agreed to get married." I nodded and avoided his gaze. Do you have any objections?" But inside, I was wondering if he'd been driven into it by force as well. "No, it's fine," he said, handing me a velvet box. "Don't be late the day after tomorrow. Once we've got the certificate, I've got to rush back to the meeting." "Just for this? Making me stand out in the cold all night long?" I couldn't help but sneer. "You're really putting me to trouble, aren't you, Bizboy?" And you even took the time to come personally just to remind me. Lu Yan laughed. His tone laced with sarcasm. Isn't this just like someone who's always late for school and has a history of it? I was too lazy to argue with him, so I turned around and ran home. When I opened the box, a low-minus key yet luxurious diamond ring lay inside. Just as I was about to figure out which finger to wear it on, he sent me another WeChat message. Left hand, ring finger. The night before we were set to get married, my heart was racing, and I kept tossing and turning. I just couldn't shake the feeling that everything was way too strange. When the maid woke me up the next morning, I realized Lu Yan had already been waiting downstairs. My mom scolded me, "Hurry up. Look at how early Lu Yan got up." I gritted my teeth, secretly cursing Lu Yan for deliberately picking a fight. Clearly, he really was my nemesis. Sitting in the passenger seat beside him, I felt the warm summer breeze gently brushing through my long hair as I stole a glance at him. The sunlight outlined his refined and aloof profile. When he remained silent, he was truly breathtakingly handsome. I couldn't help but let my thoughts wander. This marriage was nothing more than a sham, just like many others in our circle. Behind closed doors, everyone was free to do their own thing as long as they didn't make a scene in public. No one would ever expose the truth. Maybe Lu Yan was even keeping a canary, he just hadn't let me in on it yet. Just as I was drifting off into a daydream, a blue sedan ahead suddenly accelerated and cut in front of us. Lu Yan reacted with lightning speed, slamming on the brakes. My body lurched forward uncontrollably, and in that instant, he reached out with one hand to brace himself against my chest. Our eyes locked for a split second, and time seemed to freeze. His fingers rested lightly against my chest through the thin fabric of my shirt. The warmth from his palm made the skin at my ears burn hot, throwing my breathing completely out of rhythm. It wasn't until the honking behind us startled him that he quickly pulled his hand away, his ears turning faintly red. At the red-light intersection, Lu Yan kept coughing incessantly. I lowered my head and scrolled through my phone, avoiding eye contact. He coughed twice more, so I finally looked up, deliberately sidestepping his gaze and asking, "Is your throat bothering you? You should go to the hospital if you have time." His coughing suddenly stopped, and after a 2-second pause, he spoke. "I didn't mean to do that, don't get the wrong idea." Of course I know he didn't mean it intentionally. We've known each other for so many years, and HES never once treated me like a girl. Back in high school, when the head counselor caught us dating early and called me into his office, he actually asked me, being Lu Yan's good buddy, whether I knew which girl he'd been hanging out with lately. At that time, the girls around Lu Yan could line up from the classroom door all the way to the school gate. It ended up receiving countless love letters on his behalf. And when I replied to the head counselor with the words countless, I managed to save him from quite a bit of trouble. Annoying. But as soon as he turned around, he went straight to Mom and complained that I was sleeping in class, causing me to spend the entire vacation stuck in tutoring classes. As we arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau's entrance, Lu Yan was still trying to explain himself. I just reacted instinctively when I braked suddenly. I couldn't help but laugh at him. "Lu, are you actually nervous? Don't worry, even if you took the opportunity to make a move on me, I wouldn't hold it against you. After all, this is a business marriage, we're both well aware of that." Lu Yan's ears went red with sudden fame, and he turned his head briefly before striding confidently into the hall. "Cut the chit-chat. Let's just get in there fast." As we posed for photos, the photographer asked us to move closer together. Suddenly, Lu Yan reached out and put his arm around my shoulder, his warm breath brushing against my ear. "Smile a little. Play along, don't let Mom and Dad see through us." I forced us to smile. Yet inside, a strange ripple began to stir in my heart. The moment I got my red marriage certificate, it finally dawned on me. I'd really married Lu Yan. As we stepped out of the civil registry office, Lu Yan casually tossed the marriage certificate into the car and then turned to me saying, "There's a family dinner tonight to celebrate our wedding. Let's start getting ready." Scalp tingled, and I grabbed his sleeve, pleading, "Could you just pretend to be sick? Or how about you bump into a tree? Just a minor injury will do." Lu Yan pried my fingers apart and said, with a tone of resignation, Zhang Xingqi, you're now Mrs. Lu. Grow up a bit. Seeing that I still wouldn't give in, he suddenly leaned closer, a faint scent of cedar lingering around my nose. Behave yourself, and I'll quintuple your allowance. Instantly, I gave in. My eyes lighting up. Mr. Lu, should I get into the car on my own? Or would you rather carry me in? Lu Yan shot me a disgruntled glare and muttered, get lost. At the family dinner, Lu Yan's mom seemed polite on the surface, but her eyes were full of scrutiny, as she pulled me aside and urged me to give the Lu family an heir soon. Just as I was about to retort, Lu Yan gently kicked my leg under the table. At the same time, he slipped a piece of braised pork onto my plate and said softly, Mom, Xingqi is still adjusting. Let's not put any pressure on her. We'll do our best. When he said do our best, his tone carried a subtle undertone. As I chewed the meat, I couldn't help but think to myself, is doing our best just about learning to sleep in separate beds? After finally enduring the family banquet, we returned to our wedding home nestled halfway up the hill. The villa was lavishly decorated, yet it always had a faintly lonely air about it. After Lu Yan went off to take a shower, I slipped into his study, hoping to find a romance novel to pass the time, but instead, I discovered a locked metal box at the bottom of the bookshelf. Using a hairpin to pry open the lock, I found nothing inside but a stack of letter paper and a yellowed high-school graduation photo. In the photo, Lu Yan was looking at the camera instead. Ichidi turned his head slightly, gazing at me with intense focus. His eyes held not a trace of the disdain one might expect from an archenemy, only deep, tender warmth. My heart suddenly raced, and I trembled as I picked up the letter. Each one bore Lu Yan's handwriting, entries chronicling secrets he'd never known about him. He wrote about how he'd been called on for falling asleep in class, though I looked dazed and foolish. He found it endearing and even deliberately came to my rescue. He wrote about how, when he found out he'd received a love letter from a boy in the next class, H.E.D. been so furious that H.E.D. almost physically assaulted someone, but he hadn't dared explain himself to me, simply because he didn't want anyone else to bully me. He wrote about how, when he learned I was going abroad for graduate studies, H.E.D. panicked and promptly applied to University A, all just to be closer to me. And he even wrote this when he heard it agreed to an arranged marriage. He didn't care whether it was for money as long as I stayed by his side. That was all that mattered to him. As I turned over one letter after another, my eyes had already grown moist. It turns out that all those years of sharp exchanges were merely his clumsy attempts at hiding something. Those seemingly deliberate challenges were nothing but his unhidden concern. What are you looking at? Lu Yan came over after finishing his shower, his voice still tinged with moisture. My hand trembled. Can't. The letter paper, scattered all over the floor. When he saw the letters on the ground and then noticed my red-rimmed eyes, his expression instantly turned cold. Who told you to come into my study? Stammering, I pointed at the letters. All of these were written by you? Lu Yan gave a self-deprecating smile and crouched down to roughly pick up the letters. Yeah, they're pretty disgusting and childish, aren't they? Just read them through and then get out. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. As I watched his lonely back, a wave of bitterness and impulse surged up in my heart in an instant. All that talk about a business marriage and going our separate ways, suddenly it all faded away. I rushed over and wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. Lu Yan, you big dummy. Lu Yan's body went rigid in an instant. His voice hoarse. Does it even matter if I say anything? All you've ever seen in my eyes is my archenemy, never me. That's because you're reacting way too convincingly. I punched him angrily. Exasperated. Who would have thought that young Master Lu was secretly a bit of a sly flirt? He took my hand, his gaze burning with intensity. Now that you know, what were you planning to do? Blushing deeply, I tiptoed and gently pecked his lips. Since we've already gotten married, let's give being together a real shot. Lu Yan's pupils contracted sharply, and the next second, He gripped the back of my head, kissing me passionately and fiercely. That night, the Red Book finally took on its true meaning. The next morning, I woke up with aching muscles and a sore back. Glancing at Lu Yan, who was fast asleep beside me, I felt both angry and sweet. So this is what they mean by cold and aloof during the day, but utterly animalistic at night. I quietly slipped out of bed, only to be pulled back by him. "Where are you going?" His voice was hoarse and languid. "To work." I pushed him away. "Don't even think about skipping out on 5 times your allowance." Lu Yan opened his eyes, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me gently on the forehead. "Everything you've turned over, everything is mine." He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "From now on, don't call me Mrs. Lu anymore, just call me husband." My face flushed red, and I kicked him off the bed with a swift motion. "Get out." Later, everyone in the circle noticed that Lu Yan had changed. He no longer kept to himself whenever he attended any event. He'd bring along me the former devilish troublemaker. He'd play games with me, stand up for me when I was being teased by elders, and even cut short meetings early just so he could rush out and buy chestnuts for me after seeing my WeChat message saying I wanted some. Someone stared. "She's really clever." But Lu Yan just smiled and turned his head to look at me. His eyes filled with such tender affection they could drown you. "It's not that she's clever, it's that I've been plotting this for so long. And now my wish has finally come true." I chewed on the chestnuts He'd bought and asked vaguely, "What were you saying?" He leaned in, licked off the chestnut crumbs from the corner of my lips, and said softly, "I was asking, do chestnuts taste sweeter?" "Do you?" I rolled my eyes and stuffed the chestnuts into my bag. "Let's go home." Lu Yan smiled, took my hand, and our fingers intertwined. Sunlight fell upon our clasped hands, warm and dazzling.